All right. Good morning, everyone, or evening, afternoon. I don't know when you're listening because our podcast is posted to Spotify and my YouTube channel. And right now we're streaming live on my Facebook page, on LinkedIn, on my Nakana Call Facebook page. So there's lots of places you can find us. Welcome to Brave Indigenous Conversations. So, those of you that are regular listeners, know that I always start the podcast by reading a piece of writing that I found just after. This is how God works, or the spirits work. Like just after I decided to do a podcast called Brave Indigenous Conversations, I found this writing, or this writing came to me. So I'm going to read it now. An invitation to a brave space. Together we will create brave space because there is no such thing as safe space. We exist in the real world. We all carry scars and have all caused wounds. In this space, we seek to turn down the volume of the outside world. We amplify voices that fight to be heard everywhere. We call each other to more truth and love. We have the right to start somewhere and continue to grow. We have the responsibility to examine what we think we know. We will not be perfect. It will not always be what we wish it to be, but it will be our brave space together. And we will work on it side by side. So I prefer to call spaces I'm in, or look for spaces where it's a brave space. People are being who they are. So this morning, my guest is Sheila, and I'm gonna, like I do with everybody, I'm gonna invite her to introduce herself. I think this is episode 28 or 29. I'm not sure. So thank you to everyone who's been on the podcast. And go ahead, Sheila, introduce yourself.
Good morning. Thank you, Joan, for inviting me to be a part of your podcast. I'm looking forward to just sharing and being a part of exploring and go diving into whatever it is you're going to be asking me. I came on and I told Joan, well, Joan, I have a blank pages here, so we're gonna have to just do what you do best. But thank you once again for inviting me to be a part of your podcast. My name is Sheila Muskwa. My maiden name is Shingoose. My grandfather are originally from the Valley River area, Manitoba First Nation. And when my late grandfather passed away, my grandmother married onto the Cody First Nation. And I love my communities from where I am. I always start that out where I am from Valley River because Dad was so proud of where he was from and
Mm.
proud of his heritage. And it's just amazing that I went back to where we were from a little town. Oh, it's a little area right out of the Valley River First Nation. That's right near Russell, Manitoba, and well, it's not Valley River First Nation, but it's the area. And I went back there, and I always wanted to go see where my grandparents lived, their homestead. Of course, the railroad came and put a railway right in the middle of their homestead, and they had to move.
Hmm.
And it was truly moving. I am a supporter of people going back to where they came from and taking a look at who they were, and it was moving to
Hmm.
stand where my grandparents lived. And so it's just amazing. It's just amazing that when we take a look and go back to where and who we are, and to find out who we are, it's something else. And so like that experience, just doing that, did something to me in the last couple of years. I actually, it was during COVID,
Hmm.
and so I just went for a drive. So that's where I'm from. I'm from the Cody First Nation. I'm Ojibwe, and have worked many years within Indigenous public service. I started off with the federal government right out of high school. A lot of my experiences are learned. I'm well read, and my dream and my vision. And I always tell my children, my next life, I'm going to become a doctor. And but I fell in love with helping our people. The first few jobs that I got, I was fortunate enough, and I've been blessed um, by the mighty Lord. I've been blessed to be in situations and being in many First Nations country that I could not, I could possibly probably not dream the places where that I was a part of the things that I was a part of and help put together and help organize. And so really that's my background, is working with Indigenous public service,
Hmm.
it's creating opportunities, building bridges, and putting people, when we say, well, why we cannot be a part of that process, my question is, well, always, well, why not?
Hmm.
Let's figure it out, let's get it done. And I love putting in somebody's idea or my idea, or putting an idea together, building it from the ground, building it from a concept, helping find the funding and seeing it established and moving on to the next phase. And that's my life, is in empowering people and being a part of many projects that I've helped along the way in I should say, my last 40 years. Yeah.
Huh, wow. I just really can hear how much you love our people. I'm the same. I love our people. And
Mhm.
so in what would be like the maybe a couple of the biggest things that you were involved in, not necessarily biggest, but like most meaningful to you that you were a part of, like that you created.
Well, the first thing that I was part of, and I was the administrative organizer for it, was the Bold Eagle Militia Training Program.
Oh, wow.
Yes, it started with late Roy Bird was my boss at the Federation of Saskatchewan Indian Nations, and him and he was thinking, Sheila, we need to do something. We need to help people. We need to help our young people. Let's do this. What do you think about this? So we would always spin ideas off. We'd always talk, and all of a sudden we said, hey, well, why can't we get our people into, because we were talking about justice, we're talking about taking care of our own people. And he had the Employment Economic Development Commission portfolio, and we said, well, let's employ and train people, get people employed, let's get them, we need to get people into those doors, we need to get them to be um, a part of many of these opportunities, and they're not going to come to us. We have to create those opportunities. And
Mhm.
so late Roy Bird brought the idea to his commission. The commission said, all right, you figure it out, and let's get moving on this. And so within a couple of weeks or 3 weeks, we hired Graham Murdoch. Murdoch was military man and First Nation, and so he helped us launch the Bold Eagle Militia Training Program. The other
Tell
one
us-
is
Oh,
First
wait. Before the next one, tell us a little bit more about the Bold Eagle Militia. What is it? Bold Eagle Militia
Training
program?
Program.
Training
Yeah.
program? I never
Well,
heard of it. It's in Saskatchewan?
it was based in Saskatchewan, out at where is it? Lumsden, not Lumsden, Dundurn. That's where we initially started it. But what the Bold Eagle Militia Training Program does is gets young people from 14 and over to 18, and they actually might even go a little higher now. They might have expanded the program, but it's where so we were talking about justice. We were talking about policing. We were looking at how can we get people into the policing industry, and where we start to go into enforcement. And really the thing about it is working with our people and helping them. And so the Bold Eagle Militia Training Program helps train people and puts them into the army or the militia, where they learn everything from the ground up. They learn how to self-defense. They learn it's a summertime program that's open from young people, girls and boys from 14 and up.
Mm.
And this program now is based out of Wainwright, Alberta, and the federal government has now taken and expanded the program. And but it's still available for everybody. It's been operating since 1991, around there, 92 when we first thought of it. Yeah, 93 around there, and yeah, it's
And so I have to, well, we've met each other briefly, but we got to know each other very well over a short period of time. And so, the Joan in me wants to say, why would I train my children to become like soldiers? Like, what the heck?
well, first of all, is discipline. and
Uh,
and helping people realize, helping people, and it's helping giving them confidence and self-esteem. Like
mhm.
some people, it's not only just soldiering, but it's also the jobs that are within the military industry. You've got
Okay.
technicians. They say that gamers are probably some of the best military background people that work from the computers,
Hmm.
etc. So we do have a lot of gamers in our
Yeah, we're ready. We're ready. Come get our boys and girls.
so yeah, some days I'm yelling, "Be quiet!"
Hi, Roy.
Oh my goodness, or having anxiety attack of somebody getting too excited playing their game. My Our youngest son. But
Yeah.
I think the first thing, because a lot of our students, it's to help them decide what career path they want. Some people will like working outside, so that would help them. That helps. Anything that we can do to help guide a person to their career, to their calling, etc. And it is why we thought about that, and why we said, okay, let's get them into that industry. But it all goes back to where we were wanting people in policing. And so why not, let's work with the army, let's get them. We need, I guess, a bit of coaxing, or a bit of additional help with some of our people, some of our young people that may not know exactly where they want to go. And some will love it because it takes them out into the forest, it takes them out on the land. It also guides them and determining if they're really into not only enforcement, but helping the community and helping protect the community.
Hmm.
Mhm.
Huh. So, okay. So the second, we'll come back. I want to come back to policing after, but what was
Mhm.
the second thing that came to mind for you?
Oh, First Nations Bank of Canada. I'm so proud of
What?
them.
Oh
Yes,
my God.
again
Okay.
in 1994. Actually, discussions happened, and then there is one more that I do want to talk about.
Sure.
There's quite a few that I've been a part of, but First Nations Bank of Canada. I remember our first conversations, and late Roy Bird, again, late Chief Roy Bird. He's the chief of Montreal Lake Cree Nation. Was a visionary chief, was a go-getter, was a trailblazer, and everything. The braveness that I have that comes from my parents, first of all, and my grandparents, but really was from him, and from the guidance, and it just tears me up, and but he I tell you, one person that he could see everything. He could see if you're struggling with something, and he knew what to do. And there were some situations where and when somebody's moving up in the world, and some people are not, they don't share. Like, I'm not a sharer. You won't see me even on my Facebook pages or wherever. I don't pat myself on the back, or I won't share. All I'll do is say, hey, this is here's some ideas, what do you think about this? Or I'll just share what's going on or what's happening in life. And there was a time when, as a manager, because I came over from the federal government, Indigenous or Indian Affairs at the time, Diane it was called at the time. I was working with the first Indigenous, the first Nation Regional Director General, Dan Goodleaf.
Hmm.
I worked in his office in Regina, and I worked there for a year and a half, and I got offered a job at the Federation of Saskatchewan Indian Nations as their office manager. There was only a few admin people, and so that's so I moved over. I accepted the job. I moved over, and became a part of helping to build the capacity of that organization from a few staff members. At that time, it was just Elaine Flamont.
Yeah.
At the time, there was a lot of budget cuts, and a lot of people had to be let go. And uh, former Chief Roland Crow, who's a senator now of the FSIN, became the chief of the FSIN. And so there was a lot of budget cuts. So there was a lot of people that had to be moved. Contracts had to be, no longer in play. And
Yeah.
so I came along. There was Earl Magnuson, Elaine Flamont, Carol Burns, Carol Sanderson were the four admin people for the people that were the directors, et cetera, that were a part of the FSIN when I was asked to come and help be office manager. And so we with that group, you had to And this is where we talk about a lot of First Nations country, because there's a lot of times, and we take a look at our organizations now, you take a look at all the organizations, and when you start with no money, what are the options? How are we going to do this? And the reason I'm talking about that is because there's a lot of times you have to put in 18-hour days, 20-hour days sometimes, and at that time we used to sit in meeting rooms with cigarette smoke would just hang in in the room. How long people were sitting there meeting,
My God.
smoking, not going out and discussing things. But when we were when the organization was put into that situation, you had to fight or flight. There's that was we had to figure out, how are we going to move? How are we as an organization gonna move to the next level? And it all started with the chiefs. It all started with those commissions. Started with the leadership in the organization, and where they talked about, okay, we got to do things differently. And I saw that with the late Chief Roy Bird, and what he's all done. There's many First Nations country that we were a part of, right from that 1990, 91, 92, when he became a vice chief of the FSIN. And First Nations Bank of Canada was one of them.
Okay.
And, we
Take us right there, Sheila. We were
Mhm.
in the smoky room one day when Chief Roy Bird says,
Well,
or the
he
genesis,
well, here's how it started. We were talking
okay.
about, okay, what do we need to do? We need to help our people. We need to get them into the industry. We need to, and I'm exact same spots of where we were sitting, and we need to get them. How are we going to do that? So we need to show our people that it can be done.
Mm.
You need to see examples. We need to show examples. And so right away we start talking, okay, well, this is what we could do. We did Bold Eagle. First Nations Insurance is one of the first ones that we were a part of with him. And then we went on to Bold Eagle Militia Training Program. Then we went on to we decided, okay, we need to look at examples. Okay, this goes back a few years before First Nations Bank of Canada actually started the thoughts. It goes back to where we need to see examples. We need to be a part of examples. So what the chief did, what Vice Chief Bird did, along with Ken Thomas, who was the Saskatchewan Agriculture Program president at the time, who had a lot of connections in the USA. So he said, Ken, let's plan a trip to the USA. Let's tour the industry. Let's tour economic development. Let's tour tourism. Let's tour the arts and crafts. Let's bring the buffalo back. Let's tour a buffalo ranch. So in 1991, in that time, 92, we did a tour in the USA, a 2-week tour. We took 40 chiefs and their wives. Yes, and a bus. We went. We toured. I don't know how many business. We toured the casinos. We toured their. We even went way up in a mountain in New Mexico, and like in the middle of the night, pulling up in a big bus, and we were pulling alongside the road. And the thing about it was that we remembered what's his name, the guy that acts in I can't remember his name, but he's an older man that acts in all kinds of movies. And they said the fame to our place, they were saying, because he stays here, he comes here every summer. I can't remember what his name is off the top. I'll probably think about it after. But he acts in Something's Gotta Give. That movie. he's the older guy. Something's Gotta Give. But so we did a tour. This is where all those seeds, and you take a look at economic development. 8 years ago, the economic development industry, First Nations are in Saskatchewan. $40 billion industry, not only in Saskatchewan, but in other areas, because businesses expand into other regions. But First Nations businesses created $40 billion in revenue. At that time, we started, let's create an economic development strategy, a 25-year economic development strategy. And there was a lot of people that were a part of it. The chiefs, a lot of the Economic Development Commission chiefs, You talk a lot of the directors in each of the tribal councils that were a part of it, and so we sat in that commission and they said, okay, let's take a tour. Let's put this plan together. We took that. We toured all those casinos. We toured and talked. And how did you do it?
Mm,
How did you get to this point with
mm,
no money? What did you do? What, everything like that. And what we learned was that you have to have a plan. You got to put the plan in place. You got to have a vision.
yeah.
And that was one thing that, if we don't have a vision for ourselves, we don't have a vision for our family, we don't have a vision for our businesses, we're not going to move beyond our face. We're not going to move beyond our home, our
Mhm.
businesses, etc. So that's how that all started. Was okay. We need to help our people.
But why
We
did why did Chief Bird think a bank would be helpful? A First Nations bank would be helpful.
Because of the economic development that was going to be created, and plus too, I just breaking the ceiling of never being done before,
Yeah,
and how we can help people. We can give them jobs and etc. So that was a part of all of that economic development strategy, and we're creating all this economic development. So we create this economic development. Why can't we have our own bank? Why
right.
can't we have our own to help our people? And it always goes back, anyways, to credit rating. But it's just that thought of, because the First Nations generate billions and billions of dollars and
Yeah,
put them into the Canadian economy. And so, how does that benefit us?
yeah.
That doesn't benefit us very
Well,
much. We can take a look at the trades.
for listeners that aren't aware of the history of the First Nations Bank, that was super interesting for sure. I didn't
Mhm.
know it morphed out of was born in Saskatchewan. I didn't know that. And then
Yes.
the First Nations Bank, I don't know how many branches they have now, but my understanding is that originally you must have shopped the big banks because you landed with TD.
Hmm.
But and so in the beginning, it was a part of TD. First Nations Bank was a part of TD.
Yes.
But my understanding is that in the last, I don't know, 10 years or however long, 15 years, it's now on its own, First Nations Bank of
Yes.
Canada. Do you
Yes.
know anything about that, the recent evolution of the bank?
Yes. The agreement was for 10 years,
Okay.
and Canadian Deposit Insurance Corporation backed TD. Now, originally we were looking at partnering with Peace Hills Trust,
Okay.
and Peace Hills Trust also started through TD Bank, and then
Okay.
they moved on, to everything. Like, they moved on, but so they shopped around, and and TD Bank had the best opportunity, the best partnership. Actually, how a lot of it, in the background, some of the background working was my late husband worked for TD Bank.
Okay.
And
Relationship.
yeah, it's all, but we didn't expect him to be the one of the people to be a part of it, because he was only just starting, he was only just training, and had his foot in the door. And Marshall Murdoch was also a
Hmm.
part of um, a part of that whole, because he had worked for TD Bank. He was the Indigenous liaison at the time, and so he was part of my husband's training. So right away, when they saw the FSIN was looking at, creating a bank, or et cetera, like that, right
Hmm.
away they got Patrick onto the committee.
Well,
And and they were, it's just that's why I'm so excited, because we were both a part of this vision. And a lot of this stuff, I loved all this background work. I prefer to be in the background making things happen. I don't like to. This is Joan, you're the first time that
I
I'm
know.
actually
I'm
sharing
so
a lot of this.
happy. I'm so happy. Yeah.
And how all of these started, and the excitement and the scariness,
Yeah.
like, the scariness of, oh my god, who do we think we are, you know
Uppity
Being
Indian. Uppity
yeah,
Indian.
we're just, like, who do we think we are, trying to think we're
Yeah.
gonna have a First Nations bank. It wasn't that called at the time, but
Yeah.
to think of this. But we said, hey, we need to harness all the billions of dollars that are going into First Nations communities,
Yeah.
and we need to make that as a spin-off of employment, of where we can invest in our people, invest in businesses, and help create economies within our communities. And
Mhm.
that's why I brought you back to 1991 when we did our tour of
Yeah. I want to
this.
talk about that a bit
Yeah,
before you share the third thing.
yeah.
Um, this phenomenon of going on a tour is
Hmm.
kind of controversial in Indian country. Like, but I see it as a, I was just, you just made me really think like, it's really a part of the way we are. We want to go,
Hmm.
you know, just
Yep.
like my husband, like when he was younger, he would say, I'm going over there, like he'd be pointing at the mountains, I'm going over there, whatever. And I'm like, "Oh, why are you going over there? Why are you going to climb that mountain?" "Well, I just want to go look around."
Hmm.
He wants to see what's there, eh?
Yes. Yeah.
So we're
Yeah.
very we're very experiential
Hmm.
and fact based, like what's really happening. Let's go see what's
Hmm.
really happening. And
Yeah.
unfortunately, the poverty in our communities and the way that we need to improve. I'm being very diplomatic today, my God. The way we need to improve communication in our communities.
Mhm.
Leaves the average band member who's living on social assistance and sees their chief going on this tour is like, oh my
Mhm.
God. But
Yeah.
like I can see I totally I've often thought, like in my husband's little community here, there's so few tiny, tiny community. If we could just put everybody on 4 buses and head out and see what other reserves are like in Canada,
Mhm.
there's no perspective. And so
Mhm.
that's the thing you created there by going on that tour was
Yep.
perspective, so that when we make our decision about ourselves, it has some context.
Mhm.
And I just wanted to note that I
Absolutely. Yeah.
get that it's about creating context, you know?
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Absolutely. I tell you, it opened the chiefs' eyes. Like a lot
Yeah.
of the chiefs that were on that tour, their First Nations are probably I'd say 12 of the most successful in economic development. Lac La Ronge Indian Band,
Yeah.
Ochapowace Cree Nation, Sturgeon Lake Cree Nation. Those are the chiefs. Like these chiefs, a lot of these chiefs, Denton and Late West Daniels have passed on now.
Yeah.
Richard Purnan, Kawakatus, a lot of the chiefs that were a part of that tour. It
Yeah.
just opened everybody's eyes to what the possibility was. And
Yeah.
so we see, we had started it off as originally as, okay, we need to see examples. We need to show the commission chiefs what's out there.
Yeah.
And that's what happened. And a lot of it was, like you say, our spirits are, where we hunger for experience, we hunger for something new or some, to be a part it's just in us to
Yeah.
help. It's in
Yeah.
us to, how can we do things differently, or it's in us to, I guess, always lead the way, just as, and I see that of a lot of First Nations women, a lot of First Nations people across the country, a lot of First Nations people that are not leaders,
Mm.
that are not elected as leaders, because
Yeah.
I always say you don't have to be elected to be a leader. And we can take, it doesn't matter, even young people have that ability. And but it was a fact finding,
Yeah.
and the whole thing was about pooling resources and seeing what's yeah, we're used to a lot of those comments about no communication, because that is a real key issue out there, we seriously need to address that
Yeah.
in each of our communities. And it's a matter of just including, and it's a
Yeah.
matter of just being a part. And because you know what, I really feel for our chiefs, I really feel for our leadership, because it's a 24/7 job. But if we don't you don't put the proper communication tools into place, and having people to help with the situation, then we get more slander, we get more violence against our leadership, and we get more negative, that
Yeah.
people feed on negative. But
Yeah.
I'm of the position of the situation. If there's something that I'm concerned about, I will address it. But me, I feed on the positive. Because because I'm a firm believer of what we do comes back to us. And what
Absolutely.
goes around comes around. And I'm so yeah.
Onjine in our language, "Bata konjikantine," you're gonna
Yeah.
curse yourself. That's gonna come right back at you, baby.
Yeah, exactly. That's why it's if we're talking about leading and guiding and not being pushovers, not being a pushover or anything, but it's just to be positive and in a way where, well, okay, I've shared these ideas, and that's okay. When people are at different levels,
Yeah,
spiritually.
yeah,
They're different. When they get to that next level of growth within them, then
yeah,
you see the eyes wide open. You see movement, you see excitement, and you see that happening. And that's
yeah.
what we did at that tour. And that's where that created a lot of these First Nations country.
Wow, eh?
Yeah, yeah.
What was the third thing that you thought of that you wanna share about?
Oh, what was the third thing that we thought of? Well, there's Saskatchewan Gaming Authority came out of that.
Okay, okay.
With when Chief Roland Crow established the casino agreement. And then we went on to the other thing that I was a part of was, okay, there's one more casino. The First Nations in Saskatchewan were the agreement was to have two casinos, and Saskatoon voted down the second casino. And then when a lot of these chiefs that went on this tour, and the credit goes, a lot of it goes to Chief Louis Tepetat of Kakawishtaha First Nation, Economic Development Commission chief, Chief
Mm,
Barry Aniku, that was part of Atakaku Cree Nation,
mm,
Senator Saul Sanderson, who was a part, and Elsie, who were a part of helping White Bear First Nation chief Bernie Shepherd, who was also a part of Economic Development Commission. And
mm,
a lot of the trailblazers and the people that were behind that. I'm so proud to be friends of the people that I've mentioned, and colleagues and people that I could phone up any minute of the day, and we just pick up a conversation from where we left off. But it's the visionary, the leadership, the people that took it from that level.
mm,
And so when Chief Favel got elected as chief, they moved on to that was when Chief Bernie Shepherd got raided. The provincial government was wanting to charge them, and it was all goes back to jurisdiction and
Give the
all.
listener a bit more, because not everyone would know why it was Chief Favel, you said, got raided. Why did they what was happening? What was happening?
Okay. It was 1994. Chief Favel just became a newly elected chief of the FSIN. And then it was not only, I think it was like a couple of months later, that Chief Bernie Shepherd, who was the chief of White Bear First Nation in southern Saskatchewan, they had opened a gaming house, and at their golf course.
Mm,
Beautiful golf course, by the way. But anyways, they opened a gaming exercising their inherent and their jurisdiction, their inherent rights and jurisdiction, and to create employment for their people. And the provincial government came in and shut them down, and was ready to charge Chief Bernie Shepherd.
mm,
And with operating a gaming house, without a license, etc. And probably charges were a bit more than that, but Chief Shepherd happened to evade them, and we got the call. Yeah, he was in a white Bronco touring the countryside, and but his home territory. But we oh
oh, your signal. We'll just wait for it to come back. Yeah, we've lost signal. Sheila's lost signal, but this happens. Our this podcast is real and raw, and so Sheila will be back. Um, I have Starlink, and sometimes my signal goes out as well. This is so interesting. There's so many things she's raising, formal leadership versus informal leadership. And why don't we communicate with ourselves internally very well? Like, why? What is that? I know I have some thoughts on that. Um, she's probably freaking out because she's got no signal on her end. All right. Hmm. Okay, well, my editor will have to. Oh, now she's gone. She'll probably sign back in. Okay, I'm just gonna message her. Okay, this is where I wish I knew some song I could sing, eh? No, just kidding. Okay, so I'm just going to tell her sign back in. Uh, sign back in. Uh, okay, let's see what happens. So one of the random thoughts I had was this summer. Oh, there she comes. Okay, okay, there we go. At the stage. Okay, there we go. We're back.
All right, sorry about that.
Oh, that's okay.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
so so the provincial government was ready to charge our chief with all these different charges when he was exercising his an inherent right and jurisdiction of his own community. And that morning, we happened to be in Regina, and we were sitting that morning. Chief Abel says, "All right, I want to speak with the premier. Can you organize that meeting?" As the executive assistant to Chief Blaine Fable, that was my job to help put a lot of these projects together and organize meetings and organize everybody that needed to be a part of it. So I made the call to the premier's office, and they said absolutely not about meeting regarding, chief, this issue. So the premier's office is absolute no. The premier will not meet with Chief Fable. The premier's not going to meet regarding this gaming issue, regarding this issue. So we're sitting in front of the Regina, and I could probably draw a picture of exactly where we were sitting, and we're sitting in front of the Regina, and then Chief Fable looks at me and says, "Well, now what? What are we gonna?" We said, "Well, what are we gonna do?" And I said, "Well, we got to think. We're thinking. Let's think about what we got to do here." And so we're sitting there thinking, and all of a sudden, my first instinct is always politically. Is politically my first instinct, my first thought. How is it going to look? What do we need? Because we deal with governments on a daily basis, provincial, federal, municipal, our own First Nation. So it's always, how are we going to make things happen? How will we make a project happen? So right away, I looked at Chief Fable and I said, provincial, there's a provincial election. Roy Romano was the premier at the time. There's a provincial election in 6 months' time.
Mm.
The provincial government does not want an Indian issue,
Yep.
does not want to deal with an Indian issue. And
Yep.
and we're sitting there talking, and I said, and we discussed and said, well, I said, we need to let the premier's office know, and we're exercising our jurisdiction,
Mm-hmm.
and so we need to say, and I said, we can't just say this. I said, we have to call the chiefs. We have to call all the chiefs, and we have to call a majority of them and see if they're interested. And here was the suggestion, was that we open a casino, a gaming house in every First Nation by tomorrow morning. Will it work? And I said, well, we can't just say things like that. We can't just say that. We have to call the chiefs. So Chief Abel, I got the list of all the chiefs. There's 74 chiefs. There's 75, 74 in this First Nation. We ripped the list in half. All right, Chief Abel, you call these chiefs. I'll call these.
Oh my God.
So, so we then pulled it out. We said, okay, you call these, and I'll call, your chiefs, etc. And you call yours, I'll call mine, the ones that we know, because we just started working together as executive assistant and the chief of the FSIN. So we spoke with a few chiefs, spoke with a few of them, quite a few of them, and said, okay, Premier Romeo does not want to meet with regards to Chief Shepherd and the issue and gaming issue. Are you willing to open? So we're thinking, should everybody open a gaming house to show support of Chief Bernie Shepherd?
Yeah.
Everybody, absolutely yes, absolutely yes, absolutely yes. So as soon as we got a majority, so that was our ammunition to the and making the phone call. So I made a phone call to the Premier's chief of staff and said, if the Premier does not want to meet with Chief Fable, the Saskatchewan Chiefs, they will open a gaming house tomorrow morning. and then you're not going to deal with one chief, you're going to deal with many chiefs.
Mhm.
So the guys, I said, just so you know, I said, that's the interest that's out there, and they're supporting Chief Shepherd with his jurisdiction issue with our because of the jurisdictional issue. And so within 5 minutes, I hung
Mhm.
up the phone. 5 minutes later, I got a phone call and said, Premier Romano will meet tomorrow morning
Yeah, for
with
sure.
Chief Abel.
Huh.
And that was the start. That was the discussion. That was the start of the
And so
on
where
casino.
are things, there are listeners that some understand about the constitutional framework and, sovereignty and jurisdiction and all that, but where have things landed in Saskatchewan? Like, are there agreements with the provincial government? Is the provincial government, is it, what is it? Do you know?
So yes, there was agreement. So an agreement was signed within 6 months after that meeting with the provincial government, and the agreement was that for that one casino that Saskatoon voted down, that we would have four casinos on reserve casinos to match those 500. Like there was 500 machines in Regina, Casino Regina right now.
Mm,
At that time, there's 500 machines. So we were guaranteed in the first agreement, the First Nations game agreement that Chief Roland Crow negotiated, was to have two casinos with
mm,
500 machines each, you
mm,
know, to match Regina.
mm,
And so because Saskatoon voted down that casino, so we were left with, one more opportunity. And that was the opportunity that was taken. Was the conversation was is that we sign an agreement, we that we have for those 500 machines that Saskatoon did not want, that we would have four on reserve casinos. Like that's fast forwarding on the conversations, but
yeah.
so 500 machines were placed around four on reserve casinos, that these casinos were on reserve now instead
Hmm.
of in the cities. So that was
And there are still, though, the lawyer in me has to say something, because
mhm, yeah,
there are still, like, it's interesting how, like, Senator Saul Sanderson, when I was in law school, way back in like the early 90s, I finished in 91. He was known then as a sovereignist and
yeah,
a strong, this
yeah,
is our land guy. And
hmm,
so when we say, this is our land and we're sovereign, that doesn't necessarily mean we're not going to make arrangement with other
hmm,
governments that assert jurisdiction over our land. I don't think, I don't practice law, Aboriginal law anymore or anything, but
hmm,
the whole idea of concurrent jurisdiction,
hmm,
people who are sovereignists are people who see sovereignty in terms of all in or all out. And we still have a lot of that thinking in our communities, where it's all in or all out. Like, you can't do anything with the
hmm,
provincial government because we signed a treaty with the king and the queen and all of that, which
hmm,
is true, which is
yeah,
true. And ultimately, if this is our land, then we need to act like it is, and
yeah,
we need to make agreements
yeah,
with other people who are trying to say, it's like, oh, this is so a gross oversimplification, and I'm probably going to offend 100 people, but good thing 100 people aren't listening. No, just kidding. So it's like, if you have a pair of shoes that are yours and you have a sister who fits them, you know, there's a constant debate about whose shoes those are, but we make an agreement about when we're going to wear the shoes and how and why and
mhm,
whatever. And
yep,
that's what I hear you saying, is that FSIN, all while is for sure sovereignty based,
mhm.
also moves forward to make agreements with others in their territory to help the people.
Yeah, well, a lot of those conversations were we agree to disagree.
Yeah.
On definitely, we agree that we have our own jurisdiction. We are sovereign nations, and
Hmm.
the FSI in itself is not the one that gave the sovereignty, but it's the First Nations themselves as sovereign nations, and that's why we needed all the chiefs to pass a resolution, and
Yeah.
that's why even you take a look at AFN. and all the different organizations, we need the backing and the support of the chiefs,
Yeah.
and a good majority of the chiefs.
And Sheila, like that's all happening, and you know this because you've been in these discussions your whole career.
Mm-hmm.
That's all happening within the current Canadian constitutional framework of Section
Mm-hmm.
9124.
Mm-hmm.
There are sovereignists who would say, no, those are Indian Act chiefs. That's not sovereignty. I'm a descendant of the signatory to the treaty, and those descendants, that's another whole group of people. And
Mm-hmm.
so it makes for a lot of interesting and lively debate in Indian country.
Oh, absolutely, and that's going to continue. That's going to continue on
as long
till our
as
last
long
day.
as long as the sun shines and the rivers flow, eh?
Exactly, and
Um,
rightfully so. I definitely agree. Rightfully so. It was the agreement, just like the signing of treaty, was agreement to share,
yeah.
and that gaming agreement, and the gaming agreement has evolved. We've gotten different casinos as well, but and they've made changes as well to the gaming agreement. But they agreed to share.
Mhm,
The sovereignty, the jurisdiction issue was never addressed,
mhm.
as far as I can remember. It was not. It was meant to be sacred to ourselves.
Yeah.
But the agreement was we agree to disagree. We agree that we have sovereignty, we have jurisdiction over what happens in our communities and over our, of our what's ours. And then the provincial government had their thoughts and their agreements, but we said, okay, this is a topic for another day, but we need to agree to disagree and move, and where there's a common ground that we need to find here,
And
and that's
so
how that was addressed.
where the rubber hits the road, or whatever those sayings are, is that if one of those on reserve casinos wanted to put in more machines, they would have to engage in conversation with the provincial government.
Yes, the
And so
recommendation. Yeah, yeah.
it, yeah, it's a whole, we could have a whole podcast on
Oh,
the jurisdiction. And
and I'm yeah, exactly.
it's really about the money. It's
It's
really about,
really exactly. It's really about, and if you take a look at the VLTs, right, in Saskatchewan, because Saskatchewan is always and that was one of the arguments was, hey, you've got VLTs,
yeah,
you've got where's the benefit back to the people, to the
yeah,
First Nations people,
yeah,
and but it's all of it at that time. It was, and even probably now, like you say, it's everything is about money. So you take a look at the VLTs. If one restaurant or one location is making a lot, they'll add more into it.
yeah.
So take a look at
And like, if you look at too, the other part of the issue, I just want to segue, like, the other issue around the gaming is addiction, you know.
Mhm.
um and so
Yep.
some leaders don't want the gaming in their communities, in our
Mhm.
communities, and other leaders say, look,
Yep.
this is going to sound, they don't say this because they're not as blunt as me, but it's really about recycling. So if somebody goes to the casino, the VLT machines or the casino or whatever, and spends money that they shouldn't have, and then they come to the um, come to the nation when they need money because they spent all their money gambling, then
Mhm.
the nation has that pool of money. It's sort of like a redistribution, at the a crass way
Mhm.
of saying it, but it keeps the money in the community,
Mhm. Yep.
excuse me, to be
Yep.
redistributed to the people. Because
Yep.
if
Yep.
that same person goes to Winnipeg
Mhm.
or to the VLT machine in an adjacent town and spends all their money, and then they come to the chief and council for help, well, the chief and council's got no money to help them with, you know,
Mhm. Yeah.
basically. Yeah, so
Well,
it's,
in Saskatchewan, so when the night before the gaming agreement was going to be signed, there was five of us sitting. Randy Wallace was also an instrumental part of this gaming agreement. Ken Thomas, Mary Ellen Turpella-Fond. When Favel became chief of the organization, when we're dealing with the jurisdictional issue, was looking around the country. Mary Ellen Turpella-Fond was assisting the AFN, and at the time, I believe, but Favel hired her to come and help with the jurisdictional issue. And at that time, when the provincial government found out that she was working for the FSIN on the jurisdictional issue, they hired 3 new lawyers to match her capability.
Terrible.
And she was the one that guided through the legalities of everything. And so, like, along with Ken Thomas, like I said, Randy Wallace, the chief, the Economic Development Commission chiefs, Roy Bird was now the chief of his Montreal Lake Cree Nation again at the time of that gaming agreement. And but at that time, when we were sitting there the night before going into the legislature the next day to sign and be a part of that gaming agreement announcement and signing it, we were all sitting there, which was, it already was put in place already. The conversations was, okay, we're gonna have this gaming agreement. Our number one concern, and all 5 of us never gambled. Oh, we were all sitting there like, oh goodness sakes, are we doing something wrong? We're putting our people more in trouble, and what are we doing? Like I could probably do word for word, all the conversation, like the fear that came over us, and but in all those conversations, and we had people from all levels, like we say, people agreeing, disagreeing, etc. And but the thing that was the sticker for us was, our people will be employed, our people are going to be trained. And the pride I feel walking into every casino and seeing our First Nations people working, supporting their family, and being able to do things, that was the first thing that was was one of the main reasons, because if we don't do it for ourselves, no one's going to do it for us. No one's going to help us. And it goes back to ourselves as individuals. The other thing was, right away, was an addictions rehabilitation foundation that we help our people, anybody that might get addicted, because we were concerned, that was a main concern of a lot of the chiefs and the people behind it was, well, we don't want our people getting addicted, and we all agree that, okay, everybody's adults, does the benefit outweigh, like everything, so we had to weigh the whole thing. The chiefs weighed all of that. And First Nations Addictions Rehabilitation Foundation is still operating today. That was one of the first things that was a part of that whole gaming agreement. And to help people, and to help the workers, etc., and to help people be a part of it. But it all goes back to progress, I guess. And it all goes back to, if we don't do things differently, we're going to be stuck in the same concept, same ideas. And the whole idea is, we need to blaze those trails. That we need to be a trailblazer, and in a good and positive way. And I always say, I'll be a part of it. As long as it's legal, I'll be a part of it. As long as it doesn't put me in jail, I'll be a part of it.
One of the benefits that you haven't mentioned, which I'm sure was a part of the discussion too, was it went right out of my head. Oh my
economic pooling resources.
Pooling resources, economic development.
Yeah.
The capacity building.
The ability. One of the other things too, one of the main reasons for the casino agreements was that money would go back to the community. So there was agreements on a percentage wise. The province gets this percentage, we get this percentage of all casinos, including the VLTs in Saskatchewan. Because that's part of the gaming, the Trust Fund 1 and the Gaming Trust Fund 2, being a part of it. But all of that was to benefit all the people of Saskatchewan.
Oh, I got it. It came back. Yeah. It came back. So one of the things that really bothers me when we take over Canadian mainstream institutions and do it ourselves, what bothers me is when we just do it the same way it was being done. My dad would say, same shit, different pile, scruff. It's so we don't want to have the same systems, not necessarily gaming at all. I'm not even thinking about gaming really. We don't want to have the same systems administered by our own people to the detriment of our own people. We don't want the oppressed becoming the oppressor, But when we take over a system, I do believe that it creates the intention of those who lead the takeover,
Mm-hmm.
to create, take over the system and administer the system in a way that there's all kinds of buzzwords like culturally competent, trauma informed, blah blah, all of those fancy words. But
Yep.
to just for it to be a different experience for our people when they walk into that system and see all the brown people that are working there now,
Mm-hmm.
and allies, that the experience is different for us, that we walk into these spaces and we feel
Yeah.
valued and
Yep.
respected and
Yep.
understood. And
Yep.
so I know that's a part of the whole thing for you guys at FSIN or anywhere in
Mm-hmm.
Canada when we take over.
Mm-hmm.
Can you say something about that? Like, did you guys talk about that?
Absolutely. Like it's all about confidence and self-esteem.
Yeah.
And when we thought when in a lot of the conversations, we talked about how will we help our people with this, how does it help us as individuals, how does this help us economic development wise, but it's helping our people, giving them a hand up. Our people don't want handouts, they just want a hand up.
Yeah.
They necessarily don't want to be babied. That's not who we are. We're a strong people. We are resilient people, speaking of words that everybody uses, but we are strong. We're inherently strong. We when we need that. And that's what a lot of these projects have done, is to help us, put us in that space, help us put us in that economic development
Yeah.
space that'll
Yeah.
provide employment and training, and the respect that it gives to our people, for first of all, for ourselves,
Yeah.
because we're now working in the industry, we're now being a part of ownership, we're owning different things in our life now,
Yeah.
as a young person that works for the first time in the casino industry. They're now, it gives them that confidence, that self-esteem, that boost where
Yeah.
there was no opportunity before. you know
Mhm. Okay, look how fast that went. We've used up our whole hour. We're just getting going. We're just getting started. So how I end the podcast is the hour. I like to keep it to the hour because people are busy,
hmm
whatever. It's an hour drive from somewhere to somewhere.
yes.
Is to give you an opportunity to say some closing thoughts, and then I'm going to say some closing thoughts, and then I'll
Okay.
stop broadcasting live, and then you and I will visit for a minute. So don't jump off right away.
Okay. All right. Okay, thank you.
All right. Okay.
Well,
What do you?
I guess what I want to say is to everybody is, we're fearfully and wonderfully made as human
Mm,
beings. First of all, we're humans, no matter what color of our skin is, no matter where we're from, but we thrive on our confidence. We thrive on helping other people. And
mm,
that's where you take a look at a lot of the things that are happening in Indian country today,
mm,
is you see that boost, those confidence, those boosts of self-esteem, and a lot of the businesses that are happening. We need to
mhm,
bring that down to the community, to our individuals, to
mm,
individual people. We need
mm,
to help our people individually.
mm,
In our community, in many communities around the world, we're losing a lot of people to
mm,
suicide. And
mm,
we're, because it seems like they've got no hope. It seems like there's no way out. They don't see any way out.
mm,
And we need to realize that every one of us, we're fearfully and wonderfully made, and we need
mhm,
to start asking those questions of ourselves. Why not? Well, why can't we be successful? Why not?
mm,
Because that has always guided me as a young person right throughout life. If there's something or an idea, and you know what, take a look back. Take a look back, when we were only, probably, I must have been only about, I don't know, 10 years old. If I would have invented the remote control, I'd have been millionaire way back in 11 years old.
mm.
And we're sitting at a TV. I was always the remote, to shut the TV off. And this one night, I was laying there. Everybody was gone to bed, and as the oldest of 8 kids, I was always the one that had to, so my parents let me every now and stay up a little bit. So I'm laying there lazy to shut the TV off, and I'm thinking, man, why don't we invent something can shut the TV off while I'm sitting here.
Oh no, you had not.
And there's probably about 10 things that I've thought of. And then all of a sudden, 5 years later, it's on the industry, right? So we need to have that spirit of, well, why not? We
Yeah.
can do it. We can do it. We could put in, and I think what shuts us off a lot of times is our fear. It does. It shuts us off, our fear of failure and our
Mm,
fear of being told no. We
yes.
need to
Yeah.
just move beyond that. As long as it's going to help people, as long as it's going to make a difference in,
Yeah.
first of all, our lives, our thoughts, our feelings. If it's going to make a difference for us, it's going to make a difference for our neighbor, it's going to make a difference for our nephew or niece who feel they have no hope. So we need to share that a bit more, and be in tune, I guess, to what it is as individuals. A lot of the organizations, a lot of our leaders have shown what they can do when you get out of that zone and say, well, why not? Let's do it.
Mhm.
We
All
can do
right.
it, you
Oh my
know?
God. I just love you so much. You're amazing.
Oh,
Okay.
thank you. Oh, you too.
Yeah. So I'm just going to make some closing comments, not long. I've just really enjoyed this conversation with you today, Sheila, and thank you so much because I know that you're a behind the scenes person. That's where I met you, was behind the scenes, you know? And
Yeah.
so I really appreciate you coming forward into the light with me. Like I said, not many people are listening anyway. Maybe someday, maybe someday if
That's
I'm big,
fine.
if I'm big and famous, this will be in the old original or remember which.
Hey, you gotta believe, eh? You gotta believe.
I just love being in conversation. I love people and I love
Yeah.
being in conversation with people. And
Mhm.
so I can't do like a monologue beak off kind of I
Yeah.
I can't do that. It's about conversation. So
Yep.
I really appreciate you coming because I know this is not where you normally are. And
Yeah.
then I love our humor in our culture. And so I try not to take myself too seriously. And so as
Mhm.
a part of that, I feature earrings on every podcast. So
Oh,
I have a
cool.
serious I have a serious earring addiction. So these these earrings, I usually have beaded earrings. These earrings are hand painted and they're wood. They're a feather that's been how do you call that, like woodworked out of carved out of wood, or like it's probably a saw thing that the template,
Oh, okay.
and then somebody hand painted them, and so I'm pretty sure she hand paints them herself. But Jennifer Wood, of
Yep.
course.
Yes.
So Jennifer's daughter Shiloh Jones makes these
Oh,
earrings, and I'm
wow.
gonna have I pay this man helps me with my podcast. He hardly charges me anything, and I'm gonna see if we can find a link for Shiloh's earrings. And if there are any other links that you want to be put in the notes of our podcast, you just need to send them to me in the WhatsApp.
Oh,
So
okay.
that's it for today. All right, I'm going to
Alright,
end our
well,
live.
thank you so much.
Listening. Yeah.
Yes, miigwech.